Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining. I'm just going to do a really quick photo while this is all being filmed and put up on YouTube, because that's a professional way to take photos. Excellent. Okay, so today we are going to, I think it's the last session of the day, which is great. We're going to talk a little bit about SSH and PowerShell, obviously. All the things you need to manage everything. Oh, that was perfect. Now, this rocket ship should be an asterisk because there are some caveats, and we will talk about this. I assume, just a show of hands, who here is just in general is looking after primarily Windows environments? Okay, so almost all of you. Who here only works with Linux environments? No one. Excellent. Who here works with like mixed environments? Okay, so almost everyone. Fantastic. So the concept that we're going to talk about today is essentially the idea that if we have a concise set of tools and environments that we know perfectly, then it doesn't matter what the machine is that we're using. We can just use the same frameworks and tools to do the same work, and we don't need to worry about what the machine is. Because I don't know how you guys are, but when I code switch, it takes me about 40 minutes to actually get back into what I'm doing. And then, I've seen a squirrel and I'm all over this the rest of the day. And then my wife is like, how was the day? And I don't have an answer. So the idea here is that if you have a solid set of tools, it doesn't matter what you use. I'm going to keep saying this over and over again, and hopefully this burns into your brain. Okay. Sponsors, obviously, thank you to everyone, including Patch My PC, Chocolatey, Semperis, Scriptrunner. These guys help keep the lights on at the conference. So, if you haven't already, go to the booths. I'm one of the vendors, so I'm very much a fan of this sort of stuff. Okay, a little bit about me, in case no one knows. My name is Ben. I am from Australia. This is the first time I have been at PSConf without a jet lag or a hangover. So I don't really have an excuse if anything fails. I am a keyboard operator at Patch My PC. Sometimes they let me have a keyboard and I write things, and sometimes they work. I do things on Twitter. I have a website and I have GitHub. So all of these things, note, please, very important. I did this on purpose. But yeah, I use other social media things, but these are the best places to get in contact with me if you have questions. Okay, so again, same thing I've already said. With these two tools, you can manage anything seamlessly. That is really important. I just want you to keep thinking about this. When I said there was a caveat, I've spent the last significant portion of my prior life as a consultant telling everyone they need to move into cloud native only and managing their computers with Azure AD joined. If you have a Windows machine that's Azure AD joined, there's some issues with SSH authentication. We can talk about that a little bit, but conceptually, SSH has been a protocol for remote management for Linux machines and everything forever. It is the industry standard, and it's really sort of fun that we're now starting to talk about this in a Windows environment. Because again, this concept that now because of PowerShell 7, which is it just works everywhere, we can now just use SSH, which just works everywhere, and we can start to standardize what we're working with. Okay, so quick summary. So why RDP is fine? Why aren't we just using that? We're going to set up SSH. A quick show of hands. Who has never used SSH to look after a Windows environment or a Linux environment? Okay, so not that many, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the basics of setting this up as if you've never done it before. But we'll potentially get into some more advanced stuff as well. Then we're going to go, well, okay, SSH is pretty easy to set up, but how can I make it more PowerShell-y? Because each environment sort of defers to their default command line, and we want to force it into what we want so that, when we connect in, we don't care whether it's Linux or Windows. Then we're going to move into secure passwordless access. This is a big thing for me. I'm doing a session tomorrow about this as well. Passwords invariably make us bad human beings, or make us realize that we're bad human beings. We start leaking passwords everywhere, and then we get into trouble. So we're going to show you some more advanced ways that you can authenticate into things without having to type passwords. Then we're going to have a little look around how SSH works with PS remoting. We're going to play with port tunneling. Who knows what port tunneling is? Just a show of hands. Quite a few. Excellent. It's fantastic. And then finally, we're going to talk about Shark. Shark. This is a thing. I took like 3 seconds to come up with this. I guess the correct terminology is SSH over Shark or Arc with SSH. Azure Arc with SSH. I don't know. But this is essentially, it sort of shuts down a conversation that I have that's still in my demo code, where I recommend one of the first things that you need to do is change the port number of SSH, because one of the really, really fun things to do in an environment, a safe testing environment, is to just turn on SSH and open it up to the internet, and then just go get a coffee or a cup of tea, and then go watch the network traffic on that machine. It gets really noisy really quickly. So I used to say, well, just change the port number and that goes away. But there are actually better ways to do this now that we've got SSH over Arc.
How many bytes does Shark take?
That's a really good question, and I do not have the answer. But I'm sure that there is someone here that can answer that for you. The question was, how many bytes does Shark take? Probably big ones, very big ones, except if it's Baby Shark. Okay. That's my slides. Time to slide is probably 6 minutes. That's fantastic. Okay. So I've got a couple of things that we're going to go through. First, what I need to do, just because I am in conference land, I need to get my IP addresses. All the demos I'm doing are just on VMs on my machine. I do have a couple of things at home that my darling mother, who's currently looking after my cat, almost killed my internet. So we'll see if they're going to work. But for now, we're just going to run things locally. So I'm just going to get the IP addresses of everything. Let's go get VM. Maybe. I could do that. Oh, I got to run this in just for you. Okay. Hey, Yup. How's it going? Let's do this. I'm an administrator. Yes. So I'm just going in and grabbing the IP addresses of the virtual machines, just so that I can have them here. I've got my server 2025, my Debian demo, and then a fresh environment that has no configuration because I don't trust myself. So if anything falls over, I'm just going to fall over to the thing that I've already pre-configured. Okay, so let's see if we can make this a little bigger. How is that as far as readability? Ignore all the big red text. I'm going to move things around and get rid of this very annoying sonar lint error. Don't show again. Readability, good, thumbs up. Fantastic. Okay, so I have, and I stole this concept of demos from Kevin Marquette, which is you just put everything in a PowerShell script, fold it all down, and that's your session, which I think is really cool. Okay, so let's quickly do this and see what happens. It's probably going to kill itself. Let's just hide Yup so that I don't give away the joke. What do I need here? Probably nothing. Oh, actually, no, I'm just going to do the whole thing. F8. That's not going to work. Oh, I know why. That's okay. Let's do this. Off to a great start, everyone. All right, F8. Much better. Okay. I don't need most of those things, but anyway, okay. So as I said, I've got a couple of virtual machines in here. One of the big reasons, and you can see I'm not going to try and make this bigger because GUIs are awful, is that I have an old Server 2023 instance that is off. This is specifically because the current preview of Server 2025, as was mentioned in the State of the Shell, now comes with everything that you need for SSH Server and Agent installed and turned off by default. So this is hopefully going to be a big barrier removed for everyone to start playing with this stuff, because all you need to do is just enable the service and it's ready to go. So this was just a concept that I'd heard that this was a thing 3 days before I jumped on a flight, a 30-hour flight. I decided to download this and verify, and it's absolutely there. So I guess one of the first things that I brought up there is like, why do we need to worry about SSH? RDP's just fine. Who's configured even just a 2023 server recently and just followed defaults? Anyone? No one. Okay, interesting. When you do it and you follow the defaults, by default, you have no GUI. It is server core. There's nothing to RDP to. You cannot do anything with this. RDP is also, one of the big things is that you can't automate a GUI you technically can, but it's a lot easier to automate an environment that you can like throw PowerShell at. So this concept of interactively working with an environment kind of kills this idea of like increasing productivity and providing value. So RDP is out. We don't want to use that. There are scenarios that we can use that, and we will talk about that later if we get time. But the idea here is that because most of the environments that we'll be looking after no longer have anything that you need to click on, then let's start actually pretending that we're adults, and we're going to start using modern remoting technologies like SSH. Okay, so I have this. I'm just going to jump into the 2025 machine just to show you literally what I'm talking about in case. Let's do this. Oh, there's an update. Let's do this. No, let's see what happens. What could possibly go wrong? Okay, so this is basically what you see these days. If you jump on a new instance of 2023 or 25, this is what we call sconfig. This is the server config, the server GUI, all the server tools that we all hate and immediately turn off by default when we jump into Windows boxes. So this is what we see. We can just jump straight into PowerShell just by exiting that. I'm just going to make sure that I can talk to the internet. No, I'm going to need to do a reboot. Oh, updates. Okay, let's do this. Let's kill that. Reconnect. Yeah. Old habits die very, very, very hard. Yep, it absolutely is. All right, let's vamp for a little bit. Okay, so while we're waiting for that to come up, I'm just going to show you essentially what we used to need to do. Then we're going to jump onto that 2025 box and see whether we can actually continue. So the first thing back in the current times, 2023 times, we needed to essentially check to see whether we had the capabilities available to us. We can solve that by literally just running get Windows capability online where the object is OpenSSH. That is generally, especially from 2023, I can't remember when it was actually introduced, but that would essentially say that, yes, this is absolutely available. You need to download and configure this. To do that, we literally run these two things. So the client is what we use to connect and interact with machines, and then the server is essentially what will accept those connections. Once we do that, we then just need to go in and just set that service to startup type of automatic. From here, from say line 86, this is all we need to do now in a 2025 environment because all of this is already installed. So it's there. We don't need to worry about searching for it to see whether it's there. It is. We just need to turn it on. Let me jump on now. We'll see if it's there. It is running. That's looking better. Okay, so literally this is what you'll see on a fresh install after a reboot. It just says, what's your password? You can't do anything with that. So again, really pushing this idea that RDP, like, what are you going to do? I'm going to see a command prompt. That's not very helpful. One of the huge benefits of this is it kills the little script kiddie who just gets access to your machine and clicks on things and does bad stuff. If they can't click on stuff, they can't do bad things. Technically, it's not fail-safe, but it's there. Okay, so this is all good. I'm going to connect in slightly differently. I'm going to enter PS session, PSConfEU fresh. So what I'm doing here is I'm using PS session, but I'm just essentially connecting directly into the Hyper-V environment. Because this is running on my essentially hypervisor, I can use enter PS session to just interact with this and not worry about RDP or any of that nonsense. It just tunnels straight in. So I'm going to put this in, administrator. If I can, nope. Give it a second. Okay, so I'm now connected into my environment, and I just want to check that get service SSH D. Okay, so we can see, can everyone see that? That's okay. Yup's not freaking anyone out. So we can see, SSHD, which is the daemon or the server, is on, but it's not running, which is the expected example or state of a brand new 2025 box. So I'm just going to go ahead and just enable that. Let's have a look here. So my brain is off a little bit. Let's just set service. We'll just do this. Let's just copy that. And then we're going to go start service. Name is SSHD. And if we really quickly check, we can see that that's now running. Okay, so once we've got this running, in a domain environment, you can SSH into this, you SSH put in your username. So for the people that have never used this before, this is the connection process. I'm just going to clear screen. Let's have a look here. Let's go exit, get out of this. And we're going to go SSH administrator because I do things badly. I'm going to get that IP address from my fresh machine. Copy. So what's going to happen here? So I just said that if we're in a real big boy environment, not demo land, if we had this all configured, I should be able to get access to this. What's going to happen here is it's going to time out because I'm not in a domain environment. So the firewall policy by default is protecting you from getting access to this. So it's open for domain, but it is not open for public access. So there's a couple of ways to get around that. In demo world, you'd probably just kill the firewall, and that's fine. The more correct way, let me bring this up and I'll show you, is essentially to set the net firewall rule. So for my demo environment, I'm going to set this profile to any. What that essentially does is it just says the default firewall policy that is already installed on this machine. I just want to make it available to any specific type of traffic on my server. So I'm just going to grab this and I'm going to run this one. I need to connect back into it. Let's do this here. Enter PS session. Connect to is not what profile. So I trust my own environment because I built it and everything that I build is fantastic. So we're just going to go ahead and just say, yes, I trust this. Okay, so we've terminally added. It's now said, okay, well, what's your password? And I said previously that I hate passwords. So it's using command prompt. Fantastic. So by default, any environment that you use will not go, okay, well, you know, you're at PSConfEU. I'm just going to do a little bit of work to Okay, so we've settled this. Also, this is my fantastic, if anything goes wrong, just turn off the firewall. It's fun. Okay, so the best way to configure PowerShell to be using, SSH to be using PowerShell is just a registry key. It's very, very simple. We're just going to go ahead and I'm just going to copy this because I like cheating. We're just going to go in enter PS session. Again, administrator. And I'm just going to... Okay, paste. Yes, warning. Oh, nice. What do we got? What do we got? What's going on? Dollar True. Oh, because it should be fun. That should be fun. What have I got wrong? That's because I'm... Let's go here. That's probably not going to work. Nope. Okay. 1 second. I'm going to cheat a little bit and watch this. When I said that there's no GUI, because it's Windows, it's Microsoft. Come on, there's always a GUI. Let's go here. Uh-oh. I got a GUI. Okay, let's just quickly check this out. Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's exactly what I want to do. I want to set this as the default. Thank you. That's probably going to break a bunch of stuff, but we'll figure it out. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this policy. So it's still a registry policy. We're going to go into HK local machine software open SSH, and we're just going to set a default shell to PowerShell 7 because again, this is what we want. Let's just try it. Let's just see what happens. I have total faith in everything that's happening right now. Let's go into PS session. Lots of logging in today. Hey, no, I don't remember the password.
You don't have objects.
All passwords are asterisks. Okay, let's just try this one more time. Okay, that worked. Fantastic. Thank you for flagging that. Okay, so I've configured that. We can check that in here. HK local machine, software, open SSH, because we all love GUIs. Default shell. That's all we did. We just went in and we set this. So if I drop out of my session in here and just go exit, clear, and I'm just going to go SSH, put my password in. PowerShell 7.4.3. That's fantastic. If we go in, just, because we all love confirming things. PS version table. Yeah, I know how to spell. Thank you, guys. Okay, so we're absolutely using PWSH or PowerShell core. So, I've now solved this for a Windows machine. What does that look like for a Debian machine or a Linux machine? So let's exit out of that. See if I can jump into my Debian box that I believe I've already got configured. We're just going to grab... That is not the IP address of that. And if it is, I'm very confused. Debian demo running. Nope. Let's not worry about that one. I'm going to kill it and start again. Okay. While we're waiting for that to start up, just to show you, so, obviously Windows, all the configuration is just registry keys. Linux is not like that. It's just a system full of text files. To configure your default shell, there is a command basically called change shell. So what we do on a Linux environment, we just check what's available. So we're just going to list or do essentially get like tail cat of what's available on our machine, and hopefully we see PowerShell. The default path, if you install it just following the defaults, is always user bin PowerShell. Same goes for Mac. We just check what's available and we just set our default. That is going to be enough so that if you SSH into any of these environments, you will by default be greeted with PowerShell terminal. So we're already now looking after 3 different environments in the exact same way. That's pretty cool. If this comes back up. How are we all going? Everyone following along so far? Excellent. Fantastic. Love to hear it. Okay. Get service. Okay, so I'm not doing that. So let's just really quickly configure this. Cat. Okay, so we can see here, if I just make this slightly bigger, on my machine, I've got a bunch of different bash and just shell command lines. I've got dash, I've got a bunch of other things, but then I've also got this PWSH, which is what I want to default by default. Default by default, that's the thing I just said. Fantastic. All right, so I'm going to copy this bad boy. Put it here. Password. Okay, let's exit out of that. Connect back in. And we're on PowerShell. So if I go get service, it's probably not going to be a thing. What is the Linux thing that I can do? Get item, get child item. There we go. Okay. So like I've now got, obviously, the things that only work in Linux only work in Linux. You need to know how to look after your environment. This just gets you in the door. But, you know, again, this now allows you this really, really structured environment where, okay, well, the language is always the same and I'm always going to use the same connections. One other really neat thing that I don't actually have a demo for is you can set up different profiles in here in your terminal to automatically connect you to all of these different environments now. And now that you're using PowerShell 7 on your Linux, Mac, and Windows machines, you can just set up a whole bunch of different terminal profiles that will automatically connect you into these environments so that you simply just go in, select it, and then you know what you're doing. You can customize the theme so that you know, say, you know, you're going into server red or blue or green so that you know what you're working on. And hopefully that really sort of streamlines your workflow as well, because I know I spend a lot of time in terminal. And again, I have a really bad issue with going into different environments and doing different things. So if I can do everything from terminal, you know, with my nice formatting and Yup looking at me, smiling along, then I'm never going to have that like bump in my productivity where I have to go, okay, what was I doing? So, you know, that's really good. And if anyone is interested in seeing how that looks, come and find me at the booth after this because it's kind of neat. Also, I did not turn Teams off, so that's fantastic. And America's just waking up. Okay, so as the comments say here, excellent. We've now got SSH configured. That took, you know, without me talking, probably less than 5 minutes. We've got PowerShell 7 as the default solution for a Linux machine and a Windows server. Now let's get a little better and stop using passwords for everything because they suck. We suck with them and we put them in text files and put them on little sticky notes everywhere. We got to get away from that. That's one of the biggest problems faced these days, especially with, you know, native cloud environments and needing passwords for everything. We just stuff up once and then we've essentially ruined our entire environment. So we want to try and remove that functionality. So what we're going to do is in this environment, there is a bunch of things on your machine if you have the SS agent installed, which you do by default, to generate essentially pub key pairs, so public and private key pairs. This is basically the same thing as certificates. Don't freak out. I'm not going to talk about certificates, but functionally, it's just going to generate like a bunch of keys that allow us to get access to these machines, and then we can deploy them and then safely access these machines securely. So I already have a public and private key set up, but I'm just going to show you what this looks like. Let's exit out of my machine. So if I go SSH keygen, let's just run that. So what it's essentially saying here is it's going to, where do you want to save these key pairs? I'm just going to come up with a new one. So users ban reader .ssh, which is where all of these things. So this is how we get away with doing passwordless access. So let's go ahead and do this now. This is where I almost ran into a problem. There's two different scenarios, and I did run into this while I was doing some demo prep. If you are not accessing a server as an administrator, this top line here, and again, this is all going to be available on the internet. You essentially grab that public key, and then you just push it into your user profile.ssh on that server. That essentially is going to allow you to connect to the machine as you, and then you can do the things you need to do, which is the correct way to manage an environment. You never log in as administrator. If you do, there is a couple of extra steps that you need to do. There's also workarounds for this, but the most common scenario is you simply push this into a different location, which is in program data under this file called administrators authorized keys. There's a couple of different permissions you need to set on that file. Essentially, the only thing that is allowed to use it is administrators and system, and then you can actually get access to what you need to do. So I'm just going to really quickly go ahead and do this. Copy. Administrator. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to send another command. So what we've seen so far is just connecting into the machine and just doing things. You can actually send commands to run, and what will happen in SSH is it will run it, and then it will disconnect for you. So you can just run commands. So we're just going to go ahead and just go remote PowerShell. It's going to ask me for my password. Cool. So it successfully processed one file. Let's go and try to connect to that machine now. I'm straight in. So I'm now the administrator of this machine. I did not have to put in a password. This will not work on any other machine at all. And one of the really important things here is that public, not the public key, sorry, the private key itself is really, really important that you don't let other people get access to that, because if you have access to the public and private keys, then you can just put that on any machine and be that person, and you can do naughty things. So one quick solution, because I do want to show you a couple of other things before we wrap up, is there's a bunch of tools that you can use to actually deploy the private keys securely onto your machine, and then you can delete them from your system so that they're always available on this device, but no one else can ever get them. And that is, I should have this somewhere. Let's have a look. SSH add, this is the one. Okay. So SSH add, again, is another tool that you get with the clients. If we just go ahead, SSH add /D removes any identities or any private keys that have been deployed to your machine. So now if I tried to run that, it would still work because I have the private key in that specific location. But if I just go ahead and go SSH add, and then C drive. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is remove this from my machine. So I now do not have the private key. So in theory, this is just not going to work, or it shouldn't work. But I'm just going to go ahead and connect in. And I've connected. So what I've done now is I've set up my secure authentication to this machine, and I've removed any trace or any available access to that private file that gives me, that someone could steal and then try to mimic who I am. So this is a really, really strong and secure way of doing this. In fact, no, I'm not going to do that because that'll absolutely brick my demo. I was going to remove the identity and show you that I can no longer access the thing, but I'm not going to do that. Okay, how are we going for time? It's 3:36. All right. So that's cool. What I did there essentially works the same in a Windows and Linux environment. Deploying the key is very similar. Let's have a look. I believe I've got I don't think I have it for Linux, but it is very, it goes to the same basic location. So this administrator's authorized keys thing is available on Linux and Mac as well. Obviously the path is a little different. Okay. What we'll do now is I just want to show you. So remember we were doing, when I was connecting into the machine before I had SSH configured, I was saying enter PS session and I was putting in VM name. That gives the PS session commandlet the explicit understanding that what I'm trying to do is try to connect to a virtual machine on my box. But maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I just want to try and connect to it using SSH. So in hostname, I'm just going to go ahead and grab It's so quiet. It's fantastic. Username is administrator. It didn't work. Subsystem request failed on channel 0. That's weird because SSH worked. What's really cool about this is it's kind of already proving that SSH isn't working. There is a workaround for this, or there is something that you now need to do. So we've set the default shell for our machine, but PS session just absolutely needs a little more work to get this working. So again, this is the same thing you need to do in Linux, Mac, and Windows environments. So that's kind of cool. If we go into PS remoting, there's a couple of things that you want to be able to check. I'm not going to run this, but essentially get command new PS session parameter sets is going to show you, and this is more for Linux, whether you can actually use PowerShell as its sort of PS remoting functionality. I know it can. Essentially what we need to do is we need to add a line to our SSH configuration. And this is not something that we've gone into because I'm just using default at the moment for this. But if I just want to show you a fun little trick here. If I go into connect to host, I'm going to need to configure my SSH host. Again, this is just all in VS Code. I'm going to go into my personal profile. I'm going to add that IP address. So what we've got here is just a bunch of things that I want to be able to get access to. We've got identity files, port numbers. So, the stuff that I use at home is on a different port. But I'm just going to save this. Connect to host. I'm going to select 2025 server. I'm just going to give this a second. It's essentially using SSH to tunnel into my environment. And what it's doing the first time, and this may take a little while because we're on conference Wi-Fi, is it actually installs the SSH server on the machine. And I then use VS Code on my machine as a front-end client to tunnel into that machine, and then I can do whatever I need to do. Let's try this one more time. And if it doesn't work, I'll show you on another environment. That's a bummer. Okay. Let's just switch over because we're running out of time. I'm going to show you what this looks like. It is already prepared. I guarantee this won't work. That's how much faith I have in demo environments. Just give this a second. Yeah, no, see, I haven't done that yet. And that's generally where, yeah, the terrible hangover is how all demos work. That's okay. I'm going to show you what the config file looks like on this machine. SSH. And let's go in here, see data, SSH. Okay, so it's just a really long text file. There's a bunch of things in here, but the important thing is a thing that's not even in here. This subsystem, SFTP. So by default, if you try to FTP or use FTP into this, it's going to try and use that by default. There is a line that we simply need to add into this machine that is basically subsystem PowerShell. I'm really annoyed that that's not working. I could probably just tail that in. Let's go. What out file? Is that going to work? Come on. Okay, so the command we were trying to use before to get this to work was enter PS session. Let's change that port. Wrong. Okay, so what I did there was essentially the more PowerShell way of tunneling into a machine. So, you know, I used enter PS session, but you could create a script block and you could deploy things through PowerShell. Let me make that a little bigger for the screenshotters. But this essentially allows you to do a more scriptable scenario where you want to do things natively in PowerShell to sort of, you know, deploy files to environments. I have a demo, but it's not very exciting. What I want to show you now is the concept of port tunneling. I think I'm going to run out of time to do the Shark demo, but what I can do is if anyone's interested, I'm going to go back over to the Patch My PC booth and I will show that off. But port tunneling, for anyone who doesn't understand it, is a way that you can essentially say, hey, from either my machine or the remote machine, there is something that is running on a specific port, and I either want to make that available on the remote machine or I want to make it available on my local machine so that I can do things. Why this is important is it's fantastic for development environments. If you've got a web server running on port something and you just want to be able to test it on your machine, or that dreaded scenario where you need to RDP into a box, but that is all blocked down and that RDP port is not available outside of your sort of, maybe you're at home and you need to try to access something in at work. The idea here is that you can sort of, as long as you've got access to this machine through SSH and you know what you're doing, you can expose a port and do what you need to do. So I have a very fun demo that there's a very high chance that this won't work because, again, my darling mother is looking after my home at the moment and she likes to plug cables in. Let's do this. And then local. I'm saying I want to open a port locally that is 42069, which is the universally best number in the world. I want to say on that remote environment, which is just ben@benreader.com. I want to grab port 80 from that environment and I want to make it available on my computer in that 42069 port. So I'm going to connect and we'll see if it comes up. It's probably not going to. I guarantee she's killed something again. It's a really long flight. It's like 30 hours. So how long have we got? 45? Okay. I do believe we're aggressively going to run out of time while I do this. I have does anyone have any questions on functionality of this? Okay. In the back. Yes.
Won't it be more safe and totally
Yeah. So the question was essentially how secure is the public-private keys, and is there a way to sort of rotate those keys? The short answer is yes. There are a lot of tools out there that will sort of manage those for you. Another great thing that you can do is if you've got a lot of servers in Azure, you can store these keys in Key Vault and be relatively safe in knowing that they're there. Yes. Regularly rotating these things is probably a good idea, but that your mileage may vary as far as like getting adoption of that. Again, these are the same things as getting access to the keys to your environment. If someone gets access to that private key and they have your public key, then it's very dangerous. So you need to look after them. Let's just drop out. Okay. Yes. Yes.
PowerShell PowerShell has ever occurred to you that the banner or the PowerShell together with this PowerShell version gets passed to a standard out, then it's probably processing, and is there a way to get around?
Yeah, so the question was, as far as the welcome message that pops up, does that interfere with any sort of automated scripting processes? The short answer is no. That is like a user interface experience. You can disable the welcome banner if for whatever reason you don't like that, but that is not something that essentially you would capture. And especially if you're using PowerShell on a Linux machine, you're not worrying about get standard in, or you're not reading the stream and then passing text files, which is the whole point of PowerShell. It's object based. So think of it more like write host instead of write output. It's not affected by what you're working on. Another question.
Have you ever bricked one of the Linux boxes when setting the PowerShell to the default shell?
So the question was, have I bricked any of my environments setting PowerShell to the default shell? Yes, I have many times. So if you have a whole bunch of demo environments and you're frantically trying to set this up for a demo, say, I don't know, in Antwerp, and you forget that you haven't installed PowerShell 7 and you set your default command line to PowerShell 7, it doesn't like it. The experience of what happens essentially is you put your password in and it says wrong password, try again. You'd be like, no, I know my password. You do it again, you do it again, you do it again, and it knocks you out. So yes, it's absolutely possible. And essentially if you do that, pray you have access to that machine to fix it. All the way at the back.
Yeah, so as a comment on that, you can also generally just leave one SSH session open. You can even restart the daemon and that whole SSH session will still be active. So you can test it, make sure it works, but you still have your others at the back.
Correct. So just for the recording, if that ever happens, as I said, pray you've got another way to access. Pray you haven't disconnected already, because you can make those changes and you can actually restart the daemon, and it will not actually boot you from that session. So when you're playing around with this stuff, it's essentially don't just connect, make a change, disconnect, and test it. Open another terminal window and verify it before you actually drop off. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. I'm going to try one more thing. Just because it's 3:49 and I'm sure in 15 minutes we've probably got beers, and I don't want to rush anyone out of that. This might not work, but let's try it. This is a command that we saw in the state of the shell that essentially lets us connect into our environments. Actually, it's not very exciting. Azure SSH Arc is not a real PowerShell thing. This is using the AZ CLI tools, but there are absolutely PowerShell commands to do this. All this is essentially doing is tunneling in to Azure to find my machine and get connected. One thing that maybe is more exciting is to show you how simple it is to actually connect a machine that isn't already on Arc or Arc enabled using Windows Admin Center. Does anyone use Windows Admin Center? There needs to be more hands up next year. It's a really, really cool solution. Let's see if I can get into it. Let's go. Let's see if it's running. That's not going to work. That's not something that we should be looking at. I can try Chrome. What was that snarky little comment?
So why use Windows Admin Center when you've got PowerShell?
So, okay, why use Windows Admin Center when you can use PowerShell? Windows Admin Center uses PowerShell for all of its commands. PowerShell all the way. It does use WinRM as its backing connection, which is not SSH, which is a statement I just made. But yeah, it's just a really, really neat way to manage a bunch of environments. I use it in my lab environment, which is absolutely offline right now, which is the demo I'm trying to show. I'm going to have another phone call with my darling mother. Essentially, I'm gonna try and get this up. I'm gonna be here all week, obviously. I really want to show this to anyone that's interested. Maybe I'll try and get a session. Oh, it's because my Wi-Fi dropped out. Conference time. Yo.
You have an open laptop, 2 hours. You can show your stuff if you have an open stage.
Thank you. So just so everyone, I've got a bunch of other demos that I want to show on this stuff, and I think it's really critical. Anyone that found anything of interest in this, come and find me, and we'll do those demos. Are there any more sessions after this?
Yeah, it's already happening.
Just be
Breaking the ice.
Oh yeah, we definitely need to break some ice. So let's not do this. Okay, I'm having some problems here. I'm going to get this fixed up. Thank you guys for sitting down and watching me break my lab. If there's any questions, come and find me. Thank you very much. I think we're done.